Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And we have a guest today that we're really excited about. We have the wonderful Steph with us. How are you today, Steph?
I am doing well. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, this is really fun. And this is another funny story of how we met somebody. We always meet the most interesting people in the most interesting ways. But this has to do with our other venture that we have, the Good Book Club. We talk about this all the time. It meets every second Sunday of the month. And sometimes we have such a good presentation from somebody on book club that we're like, we got to put this out to a wider audience because, it just resonates and it's meaningful. And we think everybody will really get something out of it. And this was one of those months. So the beginning of this month in February, we read the book, The Art of Living a Meaningless Existence. And the subtitle is Ideas from Philosophy That Change the Way You Think. I love this cover, right? It kind of describes it. We're all like, whoa, what's happening? So, and the blurb on the back says, a collection of essays that journey through philosophy and grapple with the increasingly relevant problem of finding meaning in what appears for many of us to be an inherently meaningless existence. And now in the Good Book Club, we used to, when we started 5 years ago, wouldn't you agree with this, Landon? We used to read a lot of Mormon specific books about Mormonism, but anymore, everybody's kind of gravitated away and we just read books, right? But kind of through the lens of Mormonism and discuss it based on how we grew up and our experiences and being post-Mormon, things like that. So we always ask for volunteers to lead our book discussion each month. And Steph, who we did not know, just chimed right up in an email and said, I'll do it. And Landon and I are like, we'll take anyone. Yes, let's do it. So, but we were really happy to meet Steph, and she did an incredible job talking about this book. And also has a pretty interesting story herself. So we thought, you know what, let's have her on Mormonish. We'll talk to her a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive into this book and presentation about this book. Because I know the title sounds kind of weird. Like you're probably going, what does that mean? Living a meaningless existence. Aren't we all trying to find meaning? And that's kind of the secret of this. So first, let's start out by Steph. Wonderful of you to join us. Why don't you tell us just a little bit of whatever you're comfortable with sharing about your background or how you found yourself in the Good Book Club and leading a book discussion?
Gosh, yeah, I ended up leading the book discussion or volunteering, not as excited as you made it sound like I was. I was pretty terrified, but I felt like we had officially exited the church, my whole family, like my husband and kids. So obviously I'm married, I have children. And I knew I needed to kind of embrace that existence. So I totally loved the title of this book. I resonated with that. Like, you've got to find meaning. So we'll get to that. But yeah, I was raised in Utah. I've been in Texas now most of my adult life. So I consider Texas home. I am married. I did the young married Mormon thing, got married at 19, married my RM. And then, yeah, I mean, from there, I tried BYU for a semester, so I got in, but I made no friends, like none whatsoever. So I left. I know you can be sad for me, but it's okay.
Where did you live? Were you on campus or off campus?
I was totally on campus.
Okay, that makes it hard sometimes.
But I had like one roommate that had never been up past midnight.
Oh, okay.
So I like thought I'd corrupt her and keep her up past midnight. And then I had another one who had like been sent there to straighten up.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So I learned
so
a
you
lot.
had the gamut.
Yeah. I learned a lot from that one. That one was probably more fun. They're all very sweet. But anyway, I just like did not find my place. So I left,
Right.
went to the University of Utah, graduated from there. Did the whole support your husband because that's what you do, and put him through grad school. And then I ended up going back to school. I went to nursing school actually during COVID. So that was kind of hard to do that. And so I've been a nurse now for a couple years. And yeah, mentally, as far as my deconstruction of the church, I've always socially, like the social justice part of me has always really struggled with it. But I just always thought, oh, that's the people, that's society, whatever. And then I stumbled upon, what's the Joseph Smith book? The huge one.
The Rust Stone Rolling one. Yeah. A lot of people, that's their exit.
Yeah.
And that's considered a faithful book by a lot of people, which is so funny.
I know. I literally could not read more than a chapter. But that was enough to make me go, oh my goodness. And so then I couldn't stomach going through the history. Like it would make me panic. So I actually went down like the cult rabbit hole. Like I researched cults for like the next 6 months, and
Interesting.
that got me out, just that. And then I found the CES
Recognize.
letter, and I still can't read the whole thing. Like it still just like gives me panic. So
Yeah.
I didn't need to know everything. I listen to it. I love your podcast. Like I can listen to these things and learn, but I cannot make myself read them, which is
Yeah.
weird.
No, I'll admit I've never read the whole CS letter and I've never read all of Rough Stone Rolling. So exactly the same thing. I know enough. I know what I know, and there it is. Yeah. Have you read both of those, Landon?
Yes, and Rough Stone Rolling to me was I'd already studied all the rest of the stuff, and I knew, okay, there's a huge problem here. But when I read Rough Stone Rolling, that's when I set it down and said, this is all bullshit, because here is the church admitting what they had told me on my mission. When I'd heard these things, they told me that it was all false.
Ah,
And here it is in the book, saying, oh, that's all true. And that's when I just said, wow, they've known this and they've been lying to me on top of me having to go find it. They already knew it. And here it is in a book stating that they knew it. So that was
wow.
very
Yeah.
damaging for me.
So when you say you set the book down, do you really mean you threw it again?
No, I actually was reading in bed, and I remember this clearly. I just laid the book down and I went, it's all a lie.
That's
It's
it.
all a lie. And at that moment, that's when everything started, when I started saying I'm exiting, I can't do this. Because the worst part to me was that they had known about it and
Yeah.
lied to me about it. So
Yeah, that's so interesting. And so you say that your whole family then exited sort of with you, you and your husband on the same page from the beginning, kind of, or
Yeah, so he has kind of a different story. He's given permission. I asked him and he said I can share whatever. He doesn't care.
oh,
But he has been diagnosed with some like religious abuse stuff. We obviously did not pick up on that for a long, long time.
yeah, it's hard to
Um,
recognize.
He also had then PTSD from some law enforcement stuff. So mentally and emotionally, he struggled for, I mean, like a decade. And he admits now that he was caught in between worlds. Like he kind of was trying to be like this Peter priesthood, good father,
Mhm.
but it never lined up with what was in his life, right? Like you couldn't pray away the depression and the suicidal ideation and the anxiety and the paranoia and the flashbacks. Like you just can't. And he was even offered, they wanted him to go to the 12-step program.
Oh, in the church.
Yeah, but not but because of his PTSD, not addiction.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
realize they had something for that.
No, they don't. It's
Huh.
this.
they don't. Yeah, the
Oh,
12
I
steps
see what you're
overcoming
So
saying.
addiction, not
great.
overcoming PTSD.
Oh, I see what
Yeah.
you're
So
saying. They didn't know
luckily
what
he
else to
said no.
do. So
Yeah,
good. Okay, so they didn't know what else to do with him. So they just said, well,
pretty
we've got this
much.
12-step program. Go and
Yeah.
sit with people who can't control their shopping or have an eating dis. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I'm so sorry. They just had no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
He
Okay.
said no. I anyway, that's another long story. I was on board because I was like, oh sure, like
Hmm.
this will help. Like, no, bad idea. Anyway, so he was already kind of out, but I actually found the CES letter before he did. So I think it was just like because I handed it to him, that was time for him to open Pandora's box. Like he knew he was safe with me. And so he'd had a lot of these thoughts, but he did not know the history. He's been deeply, deeply hurt and scarred by kind of Landon, what you were saying, where he feels so lied to, just deeply betrayed. I don't feel that as much. Mine's a little bit more of an emotional like thing, but that just is really just hurt him a lot. Is just feeling like he was so lied to. He just hates that. So anyway, so then we were both on the same page. We let our kids process it at their own paces. Just very open conversation. And so, we let them do what they wanted to do. So, and they're all happy. Like we ask them all the time, do you regret anything? And they're like, nope, not a
Wow.
thing.
Good.
So we're very fortunate, I think. I know there's different situations where you can really lose your kids and have that be fractured. And so far,
And,
so good with us.
So
So
far,
we're
so
grateful.
good.
and that's where this book comes in, because,
Yeah.
as if you grew up in the church, you had this program, and of course the church always says, where did I come from? Where am I going? What does it all mean? And, you're going to be a god, you're going to have a planet, you're going to have offspring forever, you're going to have multiple wives in heaven. You're going to have it all afterwards. And then you walk away and all of a sudden it's like, what is it all for? And then you realize that, well, there's probably nothing after this life. So, we're just like the billions, trillions of other creatures that have lived on this earth. We live and we die, and that's it. So how do we put meaning to that? And that's where this book really came in and is important to, especially people who have left a faith tradition, because you now don't have that assigned meaning that the church gave you, and you have to find the meaning in your own way.
Yeah, very well said. That's exactly right. So yeah, and for the presentation that Steph gave, which was so good. If you've never been to book club, which I know a lot of you haven't, we have a presenter. We usually have sort of a presentation, and then it's just open dialogue with people talking about the topic. And so you prepared some really awesome slides that I said, bring your slides, because this will be a great way to talk about this. And exactly what Landon said. Yeah, kind of realizing the meaningless to find the meaning is kind of what it's all about.
Excellent. Okay, are you ready for me to
share ready? Share those
little slides. Okay,
let's do it. Let's see if it'll work. We always have tech issues here. We're always like, and now, and then we're like, but we try never to cut because we hate to edit. So our viewers and listeners are like, oh, there they go again. They're trying to figure something out. So, look at you. You did it right away.
Did it? Oh, good. I thought you jinxed me where you said it never worked.
No. I said us, not you. You're good. So
I'll blame you all day long. That's fine.
That's right.
Okay, so you kind of already did this little intro of the book, so I don't think we need to go over that. So like you said, each of the chapters was like a little essay. Also, you can check out, there's a YouTube channel called Pursuit of Wonder that the author is part of. And it is awesome, super good content on there. Anyway, so I kind of just spliced it little quotes onto each one that we can talk about. So this first one, kind of in talking about any time that you leave a religion, you need to realize what I think it provided for you. So this is one of the author's quotes: science, religions, and philosophies often work to provide us with answers and clarity about the universe and our existence within it. So in light of Mormonism, I think there has to be a reason why we all got into it. If you're a convert, it's one thing. If your family was born into it, or if you were born into it, at some point, someone felt like this is what provides the answer and clarity for you. So there had to have been a purpose at some point. I like science a little bit more than organized religion now, just because I feel like science is better at saying, not necessarily admitting fault, but saying we had this information wrong, and now we've done a new experiment to move forward, to change things. So I wonder how you guys got into it, or what were the foundations of Mormonism? What were the questions that were answered for you? What direction did it give you and your family when you were in?
Yeah, those are good questions. And me, of course, I was born into it like Landon was, but I always talk about how I was always in it, but I never really believed it. I didn't know that I could do anything other than it, right? Because it was so immersive in my Orthodox family and my friends and just everything. So I just very early on knew that this is what I was just going to do. And I tried to find workarounds to make it work for me. So I guess what I got out of it, because you're right, where it says, it provides you with something. Otherwise, you would take that really difficult step and go, And so for me, I think it was probably social, and it was acceptance by everyone. I wasn't rocking the boat. I wasn't doing anything overtly. I think I was a rebel in my own mind, right? I'd sit in church and go, oh my gosh, maybe someday I'll have a podcast. And I would say this in the late 70s, right? But what it provides is the sense of community, and you're doing what everybody expects, and they're very proud of you. And there's so many milestones in Mormonism, right? That you have the chance to show that you're doing what everyone expects and what makes everybody happy. Yes, I chose baptism. Yes, I'm entering the Young Women's Program. Yes, I'm the Maya Maid president. There are all these steps. I'm going to BYU. Yes, I'm getting married in the temple. And even though inside, I think I had eventually realized I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome, because everything I was doing on the outside did not reflect who I was or how I how I wished I could be on the inside, and that's a regret because I never really got to explore how I felt inside. And I think I would have been kind of a different person. I mean, still kind of the same, but I think I would have had a lot of other experiences. But it definitely provided safety, community, validation. Happy that I can do what makes people happy around me because I'm an eternal people pleaser. So for me, it was that. And then I had to reach, mid to late 50s before I just said, you know what? I think I'm done pleasing people. I've pleased a lot of people. And I think I give myself permission to step away from this that I've just kind of been in for all these decades. And so that was me. It's not very dramatic. It's not a moment of learning a truth or anything like that, because I always kind of knew, was never on board, but I finally just said, you know what, you can go see what's on the other side and it's going to be okay. So, and then that was right around the time of COVID. So that of course allowed a lot of people to have that freedom, but that was kind of me. And you're kind of different, Landon, because you were born in it, but you were a believer.
Yeah, I was born into it, but for me, it always answered all the major questions. This is what I'm here for, because I'm proving myself that I can then go on and advance and become this, a god and have my own family, and that's why family was important, and that's why what I was doing on earth was important, and that's why spreading the gospel was important, and so it answered all the questions, and it really, was great for doing that. I raised my kids in it, and I felt like, the rituals and the different steps that you did with them definitely tied you to your kids and did that for you. Like I say, the problem became when I realized that it was all a lie and that they knew it, and then it all of a sudden became, now what's my purpose? But for me, once I was out of the religion, I all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, there's all these choices out there that I can make. I don't have to walk some one path that they've told me I have to walk. And the fact that I now no longer believe in any God made me start realizing, well, if it's all over after this, then I need to make this count more than ever, because before I felt like I was living for what was coming next. And you made all the sacrifices, and you deprived yourself of different experiences because it would pay off in the end and you'd get this grand reward. And now I'm not living for a reward. The reward is the living itself, and I have to make the most of it. And that to me has been the great thing about leaving the religion, is I now get to experience things I never would have experienced in any other way. And I live for the moment, this is what I have and I got to make the most of it.
You're living on the edge, Landon. We all know that about you. So, I mean, don't you think, Steph, that it kind of answers the question? Sometimes you look and you say, how can you stay? Sometimes you get frustrated and you say that about people that you love or whatever. But with this idea of it provides something, which is different for everybody, don't you think that, that kind of answers that question? It helps you see others in a way that, they're staying for a reason. There's a reason that works for them.
Yeah. And I think there's a percentage of people that genuinely have like those questions that were on the church website of like, where do I come from? Where am I going? But I always thought it was odd that that was assumed to be a question that everyone asked.
Yeah.
Because I realized I don't really care. Like, I'm kind of good with where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like, I realized I didn't have this desire. I was literally doing it because I'm a pleaser. And I was like, this is just what you do. And I did believe in the eternities. Like, for some reason, that was motivational for me. Anyway, yeah, we could go on and on about this one. But yeah, you have to people get things out of it. And I don't fault them for that.
Exactly.
It just has to be a balance of what is true, what is not, like integrity, and also, the oath of do no harm. That's where I feel about religions, is like, you do you, boo, but like, do no harm, Okay.
That's a great way to say it. I love it. No, and I love your description of the idea that missionaries believe there are people just waiting behind every door going, who am I? Where did I come from? And that is not accurate. You're so right. I love the way you said that.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't ask that. I realized I didn't really care. Like, I'm good. Maybe that's offensive, but it is what it is. Okay, so next one, the instruction manual. I love this. He said, there is, in fact, no one-size-fits-all prescription or cheat sheet or instruction manual to life. So I was definitely taught that the scriptures have all the answers, And then maybe if they don't, you go to like conference talks and you're supposed to like contemplate, days before conference or weeks before about, what you might answer you might receive. And the thing that struck me later when I looked back is how superstitious that is. How that is like waiting for a crystal ball to give you some magical answer. And I do believe if you go looking for answers or positivity or information somewhere, you're probably going to find something helpful. But were you guys ever taught to like, if you're having a hard time, that you should just open your scriptures randomly and wherever it lands is this magical answer for you? And I'm like, that's superstition, isn't
It's a
it?
crystal ball.
Yes.
It is a
That
crystal ball.
scared
You're
me.
right.
Yeah, when I realized that, I went, oh my word, I am so superstitious. Like, and I should clarify, I have no idea if my active family's ever going to even know I did this. I did not tell them.
Probably
But
not.
I don't know. They're so sweet though. Like, because here's the thing, like, my parents did not push religion. Like, we were active, and yeah, I was in Utah. So we went through all the steps. But like, I didn't have to get my young women's, whatever that thing was. Like, I didn't have to do it. We did not do scripture study at home. We did not do family prayer. We did not do family home evening. Like, so when all this indoctrination came like into my life, I did it to myself. I literally just took the church information that they put out there and did it to myself with it. It was not my parents. Like, it was not anyway. So, which is totally different than I think your experience, Rebecca. Like, you had a whole different ballgame. Landon, I don't know where you fell like on the spectrum and all of that.
But that's interesting because when your parents don't do it, then if your parents do it, I should say, you tend to push back. I'm not going to family night, all right? But the fact that they didn't left that door open for you just to explore on your own. So that is very interesting. Yeah. I mean, look at the difference between the two of us. I was agnostic from a very young age because of how hard my parents pushed. You embraced everything and internalized it and did it to yourself, as you said. What were you going to say, Landon?
I was highly involved in the Boy Scouts growing up, and in Boy Scouts you have all these requirements and you have to do these steps to get that merit badge, and then you have to get so many merit badges to get the next rank and all of that. And so I enjoyed that, and so for me it was easy to say, oh, okay, there's all these requirements. Oh, here's the church, it's got all these requirements, and I just need to follow the requirements and then I'll get where I'm supposed to go. What I didn't realize, the church calls this now the covenant path. It wasn't called that when I was in church, but everyone has to be exactly the same. And you see it. You go out on your mission and everyone is acting exactly the same. Everyone changes who they are. They lose their personality, they lose their identity, and they all try to act exactly the same way. And as you grow up through the church, you start realizing all my friends are exactly like me. They're all doing the exact same thing. They're all telling their kids exactly the same thing. And, it took me years to realize, oh my gosh, when I start meeting people who are outside of my religion, there are so many people with just such neat personalities and such fun ways to look at life, and that just are so different than me, and how enjoyable that is to be around, and how much I love having conversations with them and understanding, oh, you do that? Oh, that seems odd, but okay. And sometimes you even can try it and you say, oh my gosh, that really worked. I never thought that would work. I always thought that was crazy, but hey, I got something out of that. I can see where you might get that. And you start meeting people with character. And I feel like in the church, people lack character. They're all almost robots. They're all trying to be the same person. And there's so much more to life. And that's what I like about this slide here is there is no one manual to life. Everyone should be free to experience it the way they choose, not based on some manual given to you by your religion.
Well, that's the problem. There is an instruction manual called the handbook for the LDS Church. If you guys haven't read the handbook, I say this over and over. If you want to know what religion you belong to, read that handbook. There is something for every decision you would ever make. And it really does prescribe. It's now called the covenant path, but there is a right way and a not right way to do it. And it's pretty clear when people go and ask their bishop, they're trained to go check. The bishop will make sure that you're doing what's on the covenant path. And so I think, Landon, that's why you run into people that are so similar. I think all of us do. And then on the outside of it, people that did not have a handbook hanging over their head, right? Their whole life. You can do whatever. You can fail. You can fall on your face. You can get up. You can try something else. You can go here, there. You can diverge, but you can find and a lot of us who left at a later age, I think that's what we're really looking for, almost scrambling to find, because it is a later age. When you look at people that leave in their 20s, they're like, yes, they have that chance to find who they are and to be, but the rest of us are kind of trying to sort it out without the handbook, right?
You're willing to take a chance because in Mormondom, you're afraid to fail because failure is sin. And then you have to go talk to the bishop and, your callings. I mean, there's a punishment for failure in the church. And so you don't not go on a mission because, if you don't do that, you're not going to, no girls are going to date you. And, you'll never be called into the bishopric, that kind of stuff, so you always say, I got to do what they say because that's how I progress. And so you're afraid to try things that might actually be revelatory to you if you tried them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Got to follow those instructions or else. This is more about, scriptures, and I think conference talks, even the hymns sometimes are very doctrinally heavy about your decisions. This one I liked. It said, there is likely no ultimate circumstance, idea, or thing that will make life's uncertainty, pain, and chaos go away. And, I just turned 40 last month. Yay. Yay. It was fun. But I spent most of my 20s, melded into my husband's identity. I don't feel like I really had my own identity till a couple of years ago. And so he gave me permission again, but I kind of share his stories because that's kind of my story. But there were some traumatic events, right? Like he was in law enforcement. There was a shooting. He had a couple of friends commit suicide. We had another friend that was murdered on duty. Just kind of these rough things, and if you're military, like it's kind of a similar story. I did not find answers in the scriptures. And I would say that as I look back, it really delayed my healing because I was searching in this abstract, supposedly ancient prophetic record, and it had nothing to help me with like reality. Like it just didn't. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and I really had a lot of damage from this whole idea that the natural man is an enemy to God. And I feel like that is like one of the most damaging, mentally and emotionally damaging scriptures that has ever been written. Like that, hands down, has really damaged like my self-worth. I had kind of a funny story. So when I was a freshman in college, I went to visit a friend of mine who was playing football at some junior college in Arizona. And I took a girlfriend with me and we watched this football game. And then after, he came back to the hotel with us. And it was in this like tiny town, this like seedy, motel. And so we end up hanging out. He ends up falling asleep there on my bed. So I'm supposed to go to sleep next to this guy. So I'm laying there and I'm so freaked out. Like I'm laying there like a soldier. We're not dating. There was no touching whatsoever. But I am so like panic stricken that there is a boy in my bed. Like I must be the world's most horrible human being. And my girlfriend who went with me is like in there too, like nothing nefarious is going on whatsoever. And I got so panicked. My solution was I got up, and of course I had brought my quad, like a good Mormon on vacation. I had brought it and I took it out in the hall. And in the middle of the night, I'm sitting out there reading my scriptures, like thinking that is magically going to fix the fact that I'm so uncomfortable with this. And I told this story to my daughter, and she looks at me and she goes, Mom, you were trying to like pray the gay away, only you were straight. Like you were trying to subdue any normal like girl who's like, dang, this guy's cute. He's laying in the bed next to me, like, and then just go to sleep. I couldn't do that. And I thought, wow, like how messed up is that? And it didn't work. Reading my magical scriptures did not do anything for me. like unfortunately. So I don't know if it helped for you guys, but it did not help me heal from trauma. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I think the idea though of, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, of the atonement of this idea that someone loves you unconditionally, especially if you don't have love in your own like family structure. I can totally see how valuable that idea is. Reading the scriptures of that, I that has to be very, very helpful. It probably was helpful for me at some point, but that's not where I'm at anymore. So I don't know. Did you have any magical scriptures that you just like got you through your life? I don't know. I
I
mean,
never read my
as the
scripture.
agnostic, so probably not.
No, I never read my scriptures ever. And I never understood anything about the atonement or Jesus's love or anything. My parents would say to me, you need to earn the atonement. It isn't for everybody. You need to earn it, So I had that kind of an upbringing. And so I just dismissed it, completely dismissed it. And I never understood what everybody else was getting up and crying about in testimony meeting or any of that. When I feel God's love, I'm like, I no idea what you're talking about. I did not comprehend it. Later in life, I would listen to end up on the Christian station, on the radio, and the DJs and the music were all like, oh my gosh, God loves me. And people would call in with these horrific stories and they say, but none of it matters because I've got God. And I'd be like, I wish I had something like that where I felt some comfort or some peace, but I never had 1 second of it. I battled everything like this. Just because I was so agnostic, I never explored any other tools to help in any way when you felt stressed out like that, because I thought it was only the church and the church didn't work for me, kind of like you reading the scripture. So there was nothing else, I didn't think of anything else. And I was jealous of people, but I also felt like they were lying. I'm like, there's no way you feel good when your house burnt down and both your legs got cut off. And there's no way that Jesus's love has got, I say that facetiously, but I really didn't believe it. I now come to understand that, some people can access that and they really do feel comfort. But for me, it never worked at all. So looking back, that's kind of being alone. Because I think, if you have a child like that or you're a person like that, you need to be free to explore other avenues of getting, I don't know, help or peace, whether that's therapy or yoga or, mind altering substance, whatever it is that you can find if it's not going to be God. But I had nothing. So I just kind of battled it like there. So, but I like this slide also, especially in book club, because, it's so clear. There's nothing that's going to make the uncertainties and pain and chaos go away. The church tells you exactly the opposite. Everything they have is going to bring peace, no pain, no chaos, order, certainty. How often do we hear, I'm certain, I know? And that's not human nature. And when that doesn't happen for you in the church, you struggle and you think it's your fault. I'm doing something wrong because I still feel pain, chaos, and uncertainty. And that causes this perfect storm of just trying harder. It's not working, trying even harder. And that can lead to a lot of problems and a lot of pain and disappointment. So I hate that certainty. There's a lot of books written on certainty. It's the worst thing in the world. It just robs you of everything else when there's certainty. So I don't know. What do you think, Landon?
I think this statement is presumptuous, but I bought into it completely because as a member, I mean, I was afraid not to pay my tithing, that if I didn't pay my tithing, I was going to lose my job and I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. And I had to go on a mission, or no one would marry me, or I had to, I did all the things they said more out of fear that there would be some punishment if I didn't do it, or God would somehow curse me because I wasn't following what he told me. But this statement's completely presumptuous as I look back on it, because it presumes that anything bad happens in someone's life, it is because they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And we all can look at two lives and see that there's people who pay their tithing, keep all the laws, go to the temple every week, and they get cancer and die. And there's other people who smoke, they go out and party all weekend, they get, they're promiscuous and all of this, and nothing happens to them. So it's random. It's random. And when you realize life is random and that it doesn't have anything to do with whether you're following these, that it's right. Pain and chaos can happen at any moment. to any of us, no matter how prepared, no matter how righteous, no matter how much you read your scriptures, or no matter how atheist you are. Something random is going to happen in your life eventually that could destroy your life, that could change your life, that could be beneficial in your life. And you just never know when it's going to happen. And when you start looking at the world as randomness, and it helps answer, to me, it helps answer all the questions. Because when, when the little boy next door has cancer and dies at age 8, and you're sitting there going, what was that for? Look at the pain he went through and the pain of the family and everything else. And then you go, geez, well, God just needed him more. That answer doesn't work. But when you say it's random, the poor guy was one of the random ones who got it, and God, it was tough to watch, and it was hard to watch, and I feel for his family. But he didn't do anything wrong. No one did anything wrong. He just was the random one. And when you look at life randomly, that answers a lot of questions. You don't have to look for, why am I being punished? You just say, dang it, I'm one of the random ones that this happened to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And with the randomness and then associated with the scriptures, it was hard for me that we had circumstances in our life that involved murder. And then you have parts of the Bible, or like the Book of Mormon, where God told Nephi to murder someone.
Right.
And like, then when I had firsthand experience of going through that, of being, next to that, I was like, there is no God I know that would do that on purpose. Like, wow, I can't fathom that. I cannot connect those two dots. That just doesn't work for me. So, sorry, did you have something?
No, it's a great point.
Yeah, it's a great point.
I was just thinking the same thing. When you think of the old, if you're going through PTSD and you read the Old Testament and you start saying, God said, go murder every man, woman, child, animal, and every other creature. And you're going, how does this help?
Yeah.
This is the God I'm praying to. This doesn't help. So you can find just as many things that drive you away when you read the scriptures as drive you towards God.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Kind of going along with what you were saying, Landon, at the base of almost everything, the resulting truth is this, that we don't know. So I don't think that we are chess pieces that are moved around by this omniscient, omnipotent God, which when I entered, right after I got married and before kind of traumatic things started happening, I believed that. I kind of was like, everything happens for a reason. And, I think now you get to choose resiliency when things happen to you. You get to choose how you overcome that. But I just can't look at these events and say, oh yeah, like that was supposed to happen to me, or, things that way. I just don't know that. But I do understand how for a lot of people, it's very scary if you are disconnecting from religion to all of a sudden not have the structure and to not have any answers. And I found that actually as a relief for me leaving, because like I said, I didn't really like asking those questions anyway, and I really hated being told what to do. That always kind of bothered me. So I find peace of not knowing. It makes more sense to me. But did any of you have problems like leaving the structure of the knowing, of the certainty of all of that?
Yeah, I think I'm like you. Exactly. I find the not knowing and randomness to be very comforting. And the main example I give is the idea of death. And I know a lot of people, scared atheist, you must be terrified now, this kind of thing. But I was always really terrified of the LDS version of what happens to you after you die. Because you die, you're judged. Somebody sees a movie of your life. You're judged by what? Brigham Young or Joseph Smith. God, everybody knows what you do. You don't know. You're sorted like a sorting hat into some kind of kingdom. Is your family with you? Are you with your family? Maybe you lived a life where you're separated from them. If you're married, are there other women now involved? It was just so many random scary things to me. And after, for sure leaving and really being honest with what I thought, I realized I really don't believe there's anything afterwards, anything that I can quantify or say, what is maybe energy or something, but I know it's not what I was taught all that time. And I felt I felt so good about that, and both of my parents passed away this last year, about 4 months apart, one expected, one unexpected. And so I kind of had to, put my money where my mouth is during these deaths and say, what do I really think? And I felt completely at peace, even though other family members were like, oh, they're now with grandpa so-and-so, or they've gone to the light. I didn't believe that. If anything, I felt closer to them and their memories. I really thought about them as people because I did not believe they existed anymore in the form that everyone else was telling me they're on missions now, like 5 minutes after they pass away. I'm like, that is not what I believe. And so to me, that was comforting. The randomness, the non-certainty is extremely comforting because you can kind of write your own ticket and make your own path. So no, I'm not a fearful atheist at all. And I think I've proved that just by experiences. I really feel really calm about a lot of things. And I've shared this before when I was sort of coming to terms with how I felt like in my 40s. Even though I wasn't going to say anything to anybody. Yeah, I think I'm agnostic. I don't think I believe in God, but I thought that to myself. And I had one of my sons was really sick, primary children's hospital, had been misdiagnosed with pneumonia. It was out of control. It was sort of a life or death. We had to race him up there and everything. And the doctors were like, we think you got here in time, but we don't know. It's going to be critical the next couple of hours. And I'm out in the waiting room and I had this thought. Sometimes I think beyond myself a little bit. And I said, well, this will be interesting to see what I do or what I really think, because typically in that situation, you'd pray to God, right? Right away. You would pray to God, somebody save my son, right? And other family members were doing that. And I was going, I really don't believe there's anybody there. So I will think good thoughts and send positive energy to the doctors. And I will think about the nurses and the staff, and I will think about everybody that's caring for him. I'll think about him, that he can fight, there wasn't any God in it. And so that was one of those moments where I tested myself and I really did believe that I didn't believe. So that was a wake-up call. But again, peace in that, I came to terms with how I really felt and then was able to articulate it more and openly and publicly later, now on a podcast, right? And then through my parents' death. So yeah, I'm at peace. And I know people don't believe that about people that have left or left religion or don't have a faith tradition anymore, but I am. So I feel like I'm bearing my testimony. I don't know.
It's true, girl. You go.
And it's funny because I never have borne my testimony at church ever, because I never was on board with anything I would have to say. And I never believed it, but I have no problem talking like this about things that I feel really strongly about in front of a wider audience than just a chapel, right? I'm kind of surprised by myself, but
You're
what about
so
you, Landon?
ballsy. Look at you.
I know. Look at me. What do you think, Landon?
Making decisions is scary. And it's comforting to think that you have some special knowledge that nobody else has that's going to help you make a decision. And the church teaches you that, if you listen to the Spirit, you'll know what to do. And then you kind of feel like, he helped me make a decision. And then that decision can't be wrong after that point, because even if it's a wrong decision, you're going, you try to assign meaning to it. Well, I know I got an answer, so there must be some reason this happened, and you start looking for that answer and assign a meaning to it. So I think people want to have that comfort of knowing that they have some special knowledge. I'm going to pray and get an answer from the Holy Ghost. I'm going to look at my patriarchal blessing and see what guidance it gives me to help me in this decision making. And I think that's comforting to people. They don't like to make decisions that could be wrong and could have consequences to them. So in one sense, you can blame God if it doesn't go right. God, you told me to do this, and then it relieves you from the onus of making that decision. And one of the things when I was a military officer, and during our training, we'd have to do platoon tactics, and they'd have you walk into an ambush. And of course, you don't know when the ambush is going to happen, but they've got an ambush set, and you're walking through with an ambush, and all of a sudden they just start shooting from every direction. And your first thing is that you don't know what to do. So you stand there, and they start yelling at you, and they're going, "What are you doing? Do something. Don't just stand there." And at that point, I kind of looked back and I said, that's really the best you can do. Is you can't do nothing. So make a decision doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, do something. You'll figure it out and you adjust from there, but you got to do something. And so when I applied that to my decision making, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try this and I hope it works. And once you start realizing that you're making the best decision you can under the circumstance. So even if it's wrong, you took the information, you processed it, and you did the best you can. And when you start looking at making decisions that way, you say, oh, that was a bad decision. I can learn from it. I don't try to assign something to it that wasn't really there. I can look at it and say, oh, that was the wrong thing to do. Next time I'm going to do better. And I think not knowing and saying, I don't know. I'm just going to make the best decision I can and hope it works out.
I love that. And you develop a lot of self-trust, or even just the idea that you can ask yourself what you think and what you feel. I'm still on that journey. I do not trust my own thoughts and feelings and instincts because I was just taught to stifle them. I mean, clearly I was laying next to some cute guy in a hotel room and I did nothing, like I just stifled.
Read your scriptures.
I read my scriptures. Like, oh my word, what was I thinking? I don't know. Like
you learn to trust your gut. And when you learn to trust your gut, then you're in tune with yourself.
Right.
And being in tune with yourself is more important than anything. And it's really, the older I get, the more experience I have. So I feel like I make better decisions the older I get. But it's experience, and I follow my gut because my gut says, oh, I've seen this before. Don't do that. And I don't rely on some mystical thing to give me an answer.
It tells you to override your gut lots of times.
Override your gut. And
I mean, people will hear something, a new policy come out, and they're told to pray about it, but you have to pray until you arrive at the policy, that you agree with it. So you're taught basically to override your core, your gut, your inner voice. You're taught to make sure that aligns.
Yeah, the November 15th policy was that way for me.
Exactly,
I was like, that doesn't sound right. My gut's telling me, no, that can't be right. That can't be right. And I fought with that before I finally went to the bishop and said, I don't care what they say. This isn't right. But I tried to, override my instinct, but my initial instinct was right. This is wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, going through that, once you make that jump, if you're not too scared to not know, the benefits, like we were talking about, of not knowing is it permits us to no longer be subservient to some specific grand meaning or template of life. So like you said, it just opens this door to, freedom of choice, autonomy, unconditional love of yourself. I feel like that's the thing I'm journeying through, is just trying to literally validate my own thoughts and feelings, because I find everything I do, it has been based on other people, on the church, like just on everything. I'm trying to find myself now in my 40s kind of thing. I think that leap is probably worth it, but I can understand how scary that is for some people. But like you said, I'm not super scared. I'm okay with the not knowing. I feel like this is what I explain to people who are still members, because I respect that. But for me, I'm like, okay, if I live a good life, which is important to me, because even though I've left religion, shocker, the natural man is taken over, but I'm not an axe murderer. Like,
exactly.
I'm naturally still a decent moral. I'm still pretty vanilla, like I'm kind of boring still, and I'm not going crazy. So if I live a good life, and at the end of that, if, like, isn't it South Park where it's like, oh no, the Mormons were right. Like, if the Mormons are right, I could stand before whoever and say, like, this is what I did with my life. Yep. And this is why I left this religion.
Yes.
I have all the confidence in the world in being able to explain that. Like, I had valid reasons, and I don't doubt that. I feel good about that.
Yeah, you have hit it on the head. I think a lot of us feel that way. When I think about afterlife, if there happens to be one, which I don't believe, I would say to God, look, you gave me a brain and you made me the way I am. And then you put all this silliness in your chosen religion and leaders. And what did you expect me to do? I've thought it through, the conversation that I'm going to have. So, and if, like in some of the old writings that says you're going to be judged by Joseph Smith, I'm going to look at him and go, really, this guy, come on. I mean, seriously, in comparison. So, but no, this is a great slide too, because I think it explains why, and probably a lot of you listening or viewing hear this when you step away from your template right? Whatever that may be, people say you're completely different, right? You have changed so much, you hear that. And even if they don't say it out loud, they probably think that. And it's exactly that. You no longer have that template and you're finding your authentic self. You may be making mistakes along the way, trying to figure it out. But I think most people feel more themselves than they ever have in their whole life. And for someone who leaves when they're 20, that's great. It's a whole life of exploration and they're getting to know themselves. For those of us that leave later, that can be really weird to realize that they weren't in touch with their actual self for quite a long time. And then you have this collateral damage of friends and family, adult children who look at you and say, who are you? And it's not that you've changed. It's that you finally left the template. That sounds like template. And you are trying to figure out who you are, who you always have been. So it's interesting to try to explain that to people because, of course, they look at it like, oh, no, look at her now. The light has gone out of her eyes. You know what I mean? But sometimes that light, I think, is just sort of I'm living the template, and when the light's gone, you're looking around, you're like, I might fall, I might stumble, I might make a mistake, but I'm awake and I'm drinking my Dutch Brothers, right? So that's the non-light, which is more alert, I think. So I don't know, but it's hard. It's hard when you have kids that are older and, other relatives that look at you and can't understand what you're doing. So do you feel that way, Landon? I mean, we're both similar age, stepping away,
Well, the church always tells you, what's the purpose of the gospel or what's the purpose of the template? It's to be happy, right? That's what they tell you. It's going to make you happy. In fact, we just got an email I just read like 10 minutes ago or before this started. And the guy said, oh, the missionaries always contact me and he'd left the church and he always says, well, why should I come back? Why should I listen to you? And they say, so you can be happy. And he says, I tell him, I am happy. And then, of course, that confuses them. And then they go,
no, you're not.
Well, you could be more happy. The answer is always that you're going to be happier, but they make it so that their answer is what makes you happy. And what happens to so many of us is we following their template and we're going, but I'm not happy. Oh, well, you'll be happy in the afterlife. You're going to be happy once you leave. This allows us, once we leave, it allows us to pursue our own definition of happiness. And we get to do it here on this earth where we know we live and we know we're going to exist, not some future promise, but you get to pursue being happy. And sometimes you pursue being happy and it doesn't work, but at least you get to pursue happiness in the way that you define happiness, not in the way that some 100-year-old guy in Salt Lake says happiness. Happiness is taking your wife on a date to the temple. No, that is not fun. That is not happy.
Oh, come
on.
on.
That is the most miserable date you've ever taken, but that's what, so every, Saturday you're going to the temple and you're going, I'd like to maybe go to a jazz game one time,
You heathen, you horrible heathen.
You want to sit by your wife? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare
Oh.
you? Yeah, but it is tragic. There's a lot of tragedy to it when you think of the things that you're supposed to put on hold and to be able to live the template, especially, like you're LGBTQ, do not have companionship in this life, follow the template, and the next life, it'll work out. Or, you're a single brother or sister, only marry in the temple. You cannot explore relationships, somewhere else where it might work out. You're alone. It'll work out in the next life. There's just so many things like that where you put it on hold for the template because you've just kicked the can down the road to the next life. And that's where you're going to be rewarded tenfold, right? Whatever you're suffering here, you're going to get it back tenfold. And you're still sad in the meantime. And then you beat yourself up because you're sad because the template isn't working for you. And you should be able to make that decision.
Absolutely. And it kind of pauses those like stages of grief. Mm-hmm. So I told you this experience, I was in my late 20s when I went deaf on one side. Random. I was just at the gym, got tinnitus, then got vertigo, thought I had a sinus infection. And then the doctor later, like a week later, told me you have sudden sensorineural hearing loss. It just never comes back. Well, sometimes it comes back, but mine didn't. It usually doesn't. And so it's just a thing. So I had, 3 babies. And at the time, the template told me, that suffering is part of life. And so, but I will, I'll be healed. Like every hair on your head will be like restored or whatever that is. And also, right when it had just happened, I came home from the doctor and my husband felt so helpless. And he's like, bless his heart, he was like in tears. Man does not cry. And he's like in tears. And he's like, I'll give you a blessing. And blessings always made me kind of uncomfortable. I felt like, I don't know, it just seemed a little uncomfortable to me, but he did. And it broke him that he did not heal me. Like he felt it was him, that he must be doing something wrong. He's not good enough. And so he carried that. He didn't tell me that. He carried that hatred, that self-hatred for years. And that stopped his healing. That just added to the PTSD. And then I'm sure it was a small piece, but it added to like he had a suicide attempt years later after this had happened. And it definitely paused my healing, my acceptance of this didn't happen for a reason. It's just, they have no idea what causes it. It's probably something we just haven't discovered yet. And it just happens. And, I live a pretty normal life. Like, but it kept me from moving forward because I was trying to find these reasons and I was following this template. And I think it can really pause healing if you have to know all the reasons and if you hold on to that. Yeah. Anything else on this one?
I was going to bring up, remember President Nelson in a talk at conference talking about his, I think, granddaughter-in-law. Anyway, somebody who had married someone in his family and her father had died and she was grieving, as you should, like you said, the stages of grief. And he said, how myopic of her. Doesn't she know that she'll see him? That attitude is so prevalent and that is absolutely ridiculous. You just kick it to the next life. As I said, oh, it's okay. Your dad's dead. He's doing missionary work right now. Why would you be sad? And you're like, because I'm a human being and my dad isn't on the planet anymore, but you're not allowed to feel that or see that. And if you do, you're weak and you don't see the plan and you don't have enough faith. And it stops you from natural healing. And I've heard from a lot of post-Mormons, and maybe you can comment in the chat, or if you're listening, they, on the other side of Mormonism, go back and re-grieve in a real way things that happen. They'll say, my mom died 10 years ago. And I just said, oh, she's in the next life. She's doing this. Now on the other side, this person says, I'm going to have a day where I think I'm going to have, a grieving period for my mom that I never had before, because I see it in a whole different way. And I can celebrate her and think about her. Whereas before it was just like, on to the next step of the covenant path. The covenant path lasts from pre-mortal. You made all those decisions ahead of time, earth, tiny little part, and then into the next life. You're just moving on down the road, right? But for the rest of us, it's not healthy, I don't think. And you carry a lot of it with you. So
absolutely. You carry it with you. You carry it mentally. You carry it in your body. Yep. I had a very proud moment when I felt like I got good at grief. Like I got really good at this because the first shooting incident that my husband was involved in, that set off a cascade of, 10 years of just this emotional turmoil and the suicide attempt and all of that. And then right towards the end, I cannot remember if it was before or after the suicide attempt. I think it was after. Another coworker was murdered. He was stalked and then murdered on his way to work, and it was a whole thing. But I hit my knees and just sobbed and just let it out and just knew there was no sense to this. It was just an act of violence by someone who was like mentally unstable and made a choice. And, I just knew you hit your knees, you let it out, and then you can accept it and you don't have to have a reason and you can stand back up. And that was a thing for me. Like, okay, I'm good at this. Like, it's a weird talent to have, but I'm like, I can melt down really well. Like, this is great, and move on. So
and cathartic. You're absolutely right. I was just thinking, have you ever seen anyone cry at an LDS funeral? I mean, really cry like that? I haven't, because they all have that perspective where it's almost like weak to cry in that way,
I mean, like weeping.
Yeah.
But not like the ugly cry.
Yeah. I mean, silent, maybe. Yeah. But I've never seen anybody emote like that in an LDS funeral. Interesting.
You should implement like the Louisiana wakes,
Oh, yeah. Those are intense. Yep.
That would be amazing. Let's just
Yeah,
get
but
it
you
all.
get it out. You
Yes.
get it out that
Yes.
way. So, and it's real. I think a
Yes.
lot of times LDS death, it doesn't seem so real because you really believe right away the person is with other people that have passed on, and you really believe you're going to see them in a blink of an eye. And often you think there's a reason they were supposed to die. Like Landon said, you're looking for reasons, right? Especially if it was a young or unexpected death. Well, there's a reason he's needed on the other side, or, something about his death will impact people here, or you just assign all this stuff to it, that doesn't let you fully grieve.
Mm-hmm. And suicide funerals are especially awkward.
Yeah, they don't ever go there.
No, that's a really, I've been to a few of those, and
Yeah.
those are very, very hard. Like,
Yep.
yeah. Anyway, I go down morbid paths whenever you talk to me. So, yay.
Well, you have a very interesting life with very interesting experiences with the line of work that your husband's in. And you both have experienced things that the rest of us can't even imagine. So we really appreciate your perspective.
Hey, anytime. We'll keep moving on. Here we go.
Anytime.
Right. Okay, so once we've fallen apart, we have to figure out how to get motivated. So this is kind of if we live in this world where I'll just read. Is it the period of time in which existence has revealed itself to be, or at least appear to be, meaningless. So it's really hard to find motivation if you have lost your sense of meaning. Now it sounds like me and Rebecca and Landon, I'm still kind of not sure about if like I found motivation after Mormonism. I'm not always sure why, but I think I always inherently like valued life, valued children. I worked actually as a teacher at one of those juvenile treatment centers. It was not a mandatory one. It was not the kidnapping children one. It was actually like a court, like people from out of state, like the kids got sentenced and then got sent there instead of prison. And after reading through, I had to get to know the kids. So I read through some of their charts and stuff for my job. And I just saw how inherently valuable a decent human being would have been in these kids' lives. And so I did that at a very young age. I think it was actually illegal for me to be working there. We found out later, but because I was too young. But that I've never had this problem with like motivation, like feeling like I don't matter, I don't exist, because I just saw like if you're not a terrible human being, like you're valuable. Like you are so valuable. But I know a lot of people when they leave, they have these like existential crises and go to nihilism, and there is no meaning in life. And I don't know, what was you guys' experience in that? Did you feel no motivation or what?
Yeah, that's interesting because when you said you started working with kids, and I thought, you know what, that's exactly what I did. My spouse and I had started a youth theater program that ran for 20 years, and I worked with kids, and I helped them with self-confidence, and I gave them self-worth, and I saw them absolutely change, from a person who could hardly open their mouth at the tryout, but they were so brave to do it, to, getting a main part and absolutely shining. And when you look at that, I think what you're doing is you're having hope for the future, and you're trying to kind of put your thumbprint on the future a little bit by working with kids. It's an easy way. And I just realized, Landon, you did the same thing because scouting was your life for so long and what you loved in the church. So, do you think that was part of it? You find this meaning by kind of paying it forward to the future in a way.
Well, that's what I was going to say is life doesn't become meaningless when you leave the church. It's that you get to define the meaning of your life rather than the church define the meaning of your life. And that is far more rewarding when you get to say, I can make a change this way. This is how I can best contribute. In the church, you're sitting there waiting for someone to come give you a calling so you can make a change or help someone. Here you can say, I'm going to assign meaning to my life, and I can go do whatever I want. I can start a post-Mormon podcast if I want, and, try to help people. Or I can, to me, meaning is given by the people that you love in your life and that you meet and that you change. And that's what the meaning is how you change someone's life because you were there. And I get to choose how I do that and who I get to do that with, not the church.
I love that. I think there is an intermediary step though, that you have to believe in your own choices. Like you have to believe that you have the capacity or the value to actually think about like, what do I want, and I definitely lacked that ability for a while. Like, kind of, I knew I wasn't bad, but I really just didn't trust my own choices, my own values. It took me some time to figure that out, to really sit down and go, okay, what are my top values? And I think everybody probably needs to go through that at some point, because your behavior is based on what you value most.
And I think that may change also based on how long you're going through the faith crisis, or what, the change, because, I spent years looking at everything, making sure that, and during that time you're going, if it wasn't for the church, what would I have chosen? And, you think about that over a long time. And then when you finally step away, you go, oh, I've got all these ideas I want to try. Kind of like President Nelson when he became the prophet, oh, I've got all these ideas all these changes I want to make, and you just go for it. But if it happens relatively quickly and you just all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I found this out and I looked it up and it was right and I left, you haven't given any thought to it. And now you're sitting there empty. And you've got to kind of assign meaning and figure out what it means. So I think it's kind of different for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a process.
It isn't. And we can't, some people spend longer in that state where they're trying to figure out and they feel very, nihilistic. And that's okay too. It is, everybody processes it differently. Not everybody can just jump right up and go, I'm out of the church now. What can I do? That, there's a lot of things to work through. So, but things that gave your life meaning before, there may be parts of those that still carry on into a new life on the other side of it. There are lots of things to look at. You're still the same person. You're just more in charge of what you can do. And everybody's valuable and everybody has contributions and everyone's really unique, And so some things that are maybe really unique about you that you weren't able to do before because of that template we discussed, you can really embrace those now and look at those and, be completely different, but meaningful to other people. There's always something that you can do. There always is. Your immediate family, your extended family, friend group, and then even total strangers every day if you want to try, just something. So.
Yeah, I agree. There's going to be purpose if you
Yep.
choose to find it. Yeah,
that's it.
And Mormonism doesn't have a monopoly on family values, on community, on loving other humans. Like, I kind of thought when I left, I'd lose the best people in the world. And some of them are. I have some wonderful friends, and I'll forever be grateful that that's how I met them, was through church. But I have so many friends that I've met and coworkers that they love their kids just as much. Like, they want to serve their community just as much. And in fact, they're probably better at it in some ways. It wasn't, anyway, they don't have a monopoly on that. So trust in your own goodness, I think. Sit with it. You'll find something. Sorry, I kind of skipped ahead on the slides, but I was going to go to the next one. Worry. I have felt like, I know I'm a very anxious person. And as I've kind of observed, I feel like, totally generalizing, I have met more highly anxious, self-critical, self-deprecating LDS people than like anybody else. I just feel like the anxiety is rampant. And the author kind of says, to remember, no one really cares. No one really cares what you're doing. And then he says this comment about how often and how long do we think or care about others we don't know that well. And his argument was that you shouldn't worry because you don't even think about other people that often. But I would say, being raised Mormon, I was thinking about people all the time.
Yeah.
So I felt like they were just as obsessed with what I was doing as what they were doing, even if it was in a loving way, thinking about how to help them, how to encourage them, my next service project. I was thinking about them, but man, when you're surrounded by that, I just think the anxiety goes sky high.
Yeah, no. And I remember when we discussed this in book club, this had a lot of reactions to it because in general, this may be true. And for those listening, it says no one really cares. How often and how long do we think or care about others? We don't know that well. Yeah. In the regular world, that may be true. But in Mormonism, in a microcosm, when you have someone going, is she wearing garments? Look at her shoulder. What do you think? Well, look at her skirt. I mean, we do think about I garment check people. You just can't help but look and go, is she not? You were taught to police yourself, to police others, to make sure everybody, you're tasked with helping everybody along that covenant path. And you have to keep tabs, be it your kids. I can't even tell you how many neighbors watched my kids as far as his hair's too long or his belly button showing, things like that. It's just a natural part of being in a very close knit community where you have these goals that it's really important that you work toward together, and everybody's watching, everybody's listening to what you're saying. And like you said, coming from a place of love, probably, hopefully, ideally, but it didn't always feel like that. So how many times would I go to the store on Sunday? Because, again, I'm agnostic, but when I pull into the garage, I will shut the door. I would never unload groceries in front of everybody else in the neighborhood because I just wouldn't, and I used to get teased about that. I'm like, I don't care. I know they know I'm shopping, but I'm not. Maybe they don't know. So I'm just going to do that, or I was notorious for missing sacrament meeting. I just hated it. I did not want to be there. I always would just go play the primary piano, and I would show up at the very end in the foyer, and I'd kind of mill around and pretend I'd been there. Oh, that talk. Yeah, it was so good, because I was worried what they would say if they knew I was gone. I think I was so good at that. I don't even know if people realize I've left. I think they still think I'm around because I was so good at that, just little appearances here and there. And why would someone do that? Why would someone go to that effort to appear like you were living a lifestyle that you weren't? Well, because you knew they were watching, they cared about you, they'd be worried if they thought you had stepped away, they'd confront you perhaps, they'd text you. So yeah, you become this, I don't know, sort of duplicitous, this double agent where you're a certain way, but then you're pretending. Imposter syndrome, I guess, is what it really is. So yeah, I don't know if this particular quote in this book, this person probably does not know Mormonism. I mean, I've told the story before. I've had, when I was DJing a parade once, and I was sitting at a booth and I was leaning forward out on a sidewalk, and I had a shorts on and garments and a shirt, but I was leaning forward. So my shirt had kind of pulled up, and I felt a hand go down my pants, right in the back, right down my pants, like all the way down, pushing and tucking. And I whirled around, and it was this older woman. She goes, your garments were hanging out. So the amount of invasiveness allows someone thinking it's totally appropriate to stick their hand down a stranger's back of their shorts all the way down to get garments tucked in. That's what we're living with. So I don't know if anybody has experiences like that, but the invasiveness can be extreme.
Yeah. Landon, do you think it's the same severity with men, or do you think it's different for the women in the church?
I think it's different because you both have said you're people pleasers, and
Mhm.
I know from Rebecca that she's definitely a people pleaser. I think men don't; they're not so much people pleasers. But to me, I was 19 years old when I went on a mission, and I had to put on that name tag, and I had to wear that when I went to the gym, when I went to the store, no matter what I did. And they rub it in right from, and this isn't the first time I've learned this, but you're actually wearing a tag, and I think that's why they make you wear this tag everywhere. And they always tell you, you are a reflection of this church. Anything you do wrong reflects bad on the church and on God. And so you spend your entire time in the church thinking, oh, I have to behave this way, or it'll be a bad reflection on the church. And then that'll get back that I'm not a good, and that's the way you grow up thinking. And, so it wasn't until I left the church and I went, here I was the scoutmaster, I was the young men's leader, I was in bishoprics. I raised so many of these boys, because I was the scoutmaster with them and the young men's for years and years. And the second that I decided the church wasn't true, nobody talked to me again. They, they, they didn't care about me. It was more like they cared about themselves. They were so insecure in what they believed that me changing my belief threatened that they might have to change what they believe. Therefore, they don't talk to you anymore. And that's when I started, I realized nobody cares that I left. Nobody cares what I did when I was in. It's transactional. It's only good for the time that it's working for each other. And once I realized that, for me it was really easy to just say, I don't care what anyone thinks of me anymore. I know what I learned. I know what I know, and I'm going to make the decision that's right for me. And I don't care who that hurts or how that hurts them, because I've got to do what's right for me and best for me. And, it sounds kind of selfish, but on the other hand, doing things to please others is the most harmful thing we can do if the only reason you do it is for their good and not for your own. You got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. It sounds selfish, but that's what you got to do. You got to make sure you're happy and that you're taken care of, and then you can turn to others.
I love that you learned that lesson. Like, it sounds like you just were able to let that crap go. And I'm a little jealous, not gonna lie. Like, I'm still working on that. It's so hard when you're
older, much older than you. So
you are not that much older than me. You always say that. Like, you are not. I am not one of the like Hulu 30-year-olds. Like,
I know,
millennials, but man, we are different for sure.
No, there's a difference. It's true. And it makes a difference at what age you leave. It really does. Do you have more of your life in front of you? Do you have more of your life behind you? It makes a difference as far as what you do and how you feel about everything. And that's okay. It's okay. Somebody posed the question on social media the other day. I'm 65 or something, they said, and I left quite late. Anybody else like me? And people were weighing in, they were saying, oh, something around my age. I was 56 or I was this and that. And then someone said, there's a lady in our neighborhood and she was 80 when she, 80. Why not? You know what I mean? So anytime.
I think it also depends on your personality, because I'm not an emotional person. I don't have emotional ties. I'm more of a thinker or a thoughtful person. And so when my thought changes, it's easy for me to say, because I'm not emotionally connected, or I'm not that feeling person, that touchy-feely person. So if someone doesn't like me, that's okay. But other people, that's horrendous to them, that, because they're a very feeling person. So it hurts their feelings if they're not liked. And so everyone's going to experience that differently. And so, just because I could walk away from it doesn't mean someone else can, because, they're a different person than me.
That's why you, Landon, that's why you handle the comments that we ever get that are negative on Mormonish, right? You have no problem writing back and say, so if I see those, I write back, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Oh, we'll try so much harder, and you're like, whatever. So yeah, that's our little secret. Depending on what response it is, you can tell if it's me or if it's Landon writing back.
I felt like the timing was right for me to finally do a podcast, because I'm finally at the point where I don't like replay everything I said during a day at night when I go to sleep. Yeah. So I'm totally okay with recording this, and then I'm never going to watch it. And I'm okay with, and I'm not going to look at the comments. Like, I'm going to let y'all handle that. Yeah. I don't want to know. And I'm okay with the not knowing anymore.
No, you're awesome. Everyone's going to love you. You're fabulous.
I guess.
So, such great insight.
The reason why, is because hell is other people. Other people are scary.
That's funny.
Right? Especially when your value is placed on them. So this quote from the book,
this was my favorite quote from the whole book.
Is it the hell is other people part, or the second?
Yes, because I'm a manager and I manage people, and it's like my life is hell because of other people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and in medicine, so I'm an RN, but I do butts and guts, so colonoscopies and endoscopies, and like, man, you get all types. Like, it's just, but I love it. Like, I love, like, the crazier you are, the more you are my person. Like, just, I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole thing. But the second quote that I've got on here says, hell is the imposed state of dependence and modification of oneself according to the integration, approval, and satisfaction of other people's perception. And I very much didn't know I was consciously living my life according to approval and satisfaction to other people. But I grieve for like my younger self. Like, when I got my patriarchal blessing, I was like 16 or 17, and I had done nothing. I was not having sex. I was not drinking. I was not doing drugs. I was a straight A student. I was on sports teams. Like, I was a good kid. And the thing that emotionally like meant the most out of my patriarchal blessing was it said that I was worthy. I had to wait for this elderly gentleman to tell me that I was a worthy human being. Like, I had no self-worthiness. I was waiting for somebody else's perception, somebody else's approval. which I viewed, I guess, as God's approval. I don't know why I did not clue in to thinking that God automatically approved of me, probably because of all the rules and restrictions and checklists and behaviors that were limited. But I didn't have that. I don't know if you guys had like, or if you lived by, needing to be integrated in the community, getting approval. Did you guys experience that?
Yeah, I think that's always there. It's kind of baked into Mormonism that you just, so especially if you're raised in a ward with a group of friends, that you do everything together and then you compare to what everybody's doing, and parents compare. And like we talked about before, there's a certain kind of behavior, and that's what's expected, and everybody kind of watches it. And if you're a people pleaser, you never ever think about doing anything different than what would be expected or what the group is doing. And then you get older and maybe some of that goes away and you're like, why didn't I go do that? Well, no one else was doing it. That's why, anything like, why didn't I pursue this? Or why didn't I think about doing that? So if you're a people pleaser and you're raised in the church, you're very group minded, I think. And it takes a while. I mean, and everybody's different. I mean, like I said, I finally in my late 50s I give myself permission to do something radical and step away. But I didn't go out and tell everybody. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't make a post. I just kind of stepped away, and a lot of people didn't even realize. I had somebody ask me just 2 days ago. A friend came into work who I hadn't seen for a really long time and said, "Hey, I heard kind of that you're out." And I said, for a minute, I was like, what? I didn't even think about what they meant, because I never was in, but no one knew that. And I said, yeah, I am. And then I said something really radical that I've never said to anyone else. I said, and I have a podcast. I don't know why that popped out of my mouth, because a lot of people don't really know. And the friend said, "Oh, really? What's it called?" And then I was so glad the phone rang, and I'm like, see ya. So I don't think they know. If they're watching now, hi, if you found me. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of come into your own and be your own person when, you have spent hell as other people, your whole life thinking about other people and making decisions based on other people. And again, that's personality driven. Not everybody's like that. But I mean, like you said, you're not like that, Landon.
Yeah, I look at this slide and I think, I mean, this is the definition of the church. Especially as a man in the church, your worth is based on your calling. Were you worthy enough to be a bishop or a stake president or a GA or and here you are. If you're down there and you're going, I just keep getting called to primary, you kind of start putting your approval of yourself is pretty low. I'm not that guy. I'm not that good, and if you do get into those others, it's because you have the approval of the higher ups, they approve of you and they're calling you. And that was one of the things I always sat and I went, I have to just sit around and wait for somebody to call me and to say, "Oh, we want you to come and do this," where you're sitting there going, I could do that, but you can't volunteer. You have to wait and try to impress someone or try to get somebody to call you to do that, and so you're sitting there wasting your life waiting for someone to notice you, give you approval, and give you a calling, as opposed to just taking the bulls by the horn and saying, I'm going to volunteer to go do this. If you weren't in the church, you could volunteer yourself to go do that. I mean, I just think of, Scoutmaster, Young Men's President. You're waiting to be called to that, but on the outside world, you just go volunteer to be a Scoutmaster. You go volunteer to help in the organization, and that most places are happy to have help and will assign you to that position because you volunteered for it. But in the church, you don't get to volunteer. You have to wait for that approval before you can do anything.
Yeah, I don't know how many people were waiting to be a Scoutmaster, Landon, but you were, so that's okay.
But definitely on your mission, like, yeah, I've got to be a district leader. Oh, I got to be a zone leader. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to be the AP,
I'm going to work in the MTC.
They build that in you, and you have to seek the approval of the mission president, or you'll never be any of those things, Yeah,
no, that's absolutely true. I had never thought about that concept till I had moved into a new ward, and it was full of, you're the elders quorum president, whatever. I moved into a ward where everybody had been the elders quorum president, right? I mean, the game was just upped. Every woman had been a Relief Society from the place they moved from. It was like a new new subdivision and everyone had been something. So, it was this huge one-upmanship kind of a thing. And I didn't ever play that game. I was fine. I'm like, put me in the primary. But this one guy got up, it was like a high council Sunday, and they were sustaining some people that had been called to be high counselors, and they were shifting some people around in leadership, and they did all this sustaining. And this guy was given a talk, and he got up, he goes, you know what? He goes, this used to make me really mad. Like, I used to be really jealous of these kind of people because I want this calling. I want your calling. I remember he turned around on the stand. He goes, I want your calling. Why can't I be called to something? And everyone's like, what is happening? He goes, then I realized exactly what Landon said. He's like, I can go do whatever I want. I can help people. I can do whatever I want. And in fact, I like to announce that my family were moving. They were moving to another country. They were opening an area of a brand new MLM. The guy now is the top of that MLM. He's like a multi-millionaire, but he had this moment where he's like, I don't have to wait. I am taking action, and I'm going to go out and help in the community. I'm going to go somewhere and do something, and I don't have to be jealous of somebody that got a calling. So it was radical. I bet I kind of outed myself, because if anybody else was in that ward that day, no one would have ever forgotten that talk.
You're going to get caught.
Yeah, exactly.
And the funny thing is, once you're in that bishop position or that stake president position, that's when you realize hell is other people.
Yeah,
everybody's going to unload all their problems on you and blame you for things that are happening.
Full circle. Yeah. That's it. Hell is other people. Wow.
And that's a whole other opposition of like, what are we really doing to our leaders? But I do know, and I think you made a good point, Landon, that, women, like, we do try to please each other, but of course you want to be young women's president, but I think because we're not, the mothers of the ward, we're not put in places of prestige, I would say. And those prestigious positions for men, if you're a believer, get the approval of God. Like, God thought you were good at this. And on the flip side, if you think you're good enough, but you are not called, that's kind of saying God does not think you are good enough.
Yep.
And I know, several male friends that put them literally into depression, and they had to be treated after, because either they got released from a high status calling or whatever. And it's a very sad state of approval that you need to have that stamp, to have value.
Yeah, well, and now we know how it happens. It's not God. It's, oh, yeah, he goes to my gym and he's a pretty awesome guy. I'll make him my executive secretary. Or, oh, he seems like, he has the biggest house in the neighborhood. We'll make him, that exists. It does exist. And you also promote who you know. So, I mean, I know people that will move into an affluent neighborhood where CEOs go to church to try to get an actual job in the community, as they hobnob, put on their best suit, play the part. That all exists. Everybody plays that game.
I was in a stake that had 10 wards, and 7 of the bishops were dentists. So it's kind of like, okay, what are the chances that dentists are all doing exactly what God approves of? It's that they got the time and they got the influence and they got the money, and they can. And
they probably have a pool, right? They can have the young men over. That's really important.
They got all of those things, and you start realizing that after you've been in the church a while. You start realizing it's not God, it's who you know. God seems to know the same people that the leaders know, and that seems to be the only people he knows. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. Hopefully we can let go of that, need to be accepted and move on. That's our whole point, right? In learning a new philosophy. Okay. So moving on in this one, it kind of talked about this concept of awe. And I know there's been some recent scientific studies on, what people are actually doing biologically and like neurologically when they're in this state of feeling awe, which I think in Mormon speak is when we call it like the spiritual experiences. And Carl Sagan said, the cosmos is all that is or was or ever will be. Our feeblest contemplations of the cosmos stir us. And I feel like that stirring that he's talking about is that feeling of awe, that feeling of the spirit. But one thing that is hard in changing your philosophy, in exiting a religion, is what do I do with these things that I viewed as spiritual experiences? how do I reconcile them? What were they? And what do I do going forward? Do I feel awe? Do I have spiritual experiences? Is that part of life? Is that part of humanity? Like, where do we go from here? So, did any of you guys, have any spiritual experiences you had a hard time with, like reconciling? Or how do you find awe in your life now? Like, is that important and is it possible?
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that because they do have experiences where they felt things and they know those are real. And RFM had a really good, I think it was at Thrive, but it was recorded, a talk about that, a presentation, because he said, I, like many of you, had times in my life where things happened. There's no way I can deny it. And it's a really good talk. Maybe I can find it and link it somewhere. But the bottom line was he came to realize that those were human experiences and they were real, but they were human. It was humanity and just as powerful, but it was all you, right? And so you don't have to, put those away or say they weren't real. You just kind of reframe them into something else. And, whether or not you believe on the other side of Mormonism in a deity or whatever, humanity seems to be what they understand and what they gravitate towards. And I think that awe feeling I hear so many times in so many, presentations by post-Mormons or just talking to post-Mormons, that being out in nature is where they get this. And they'll have these experiences outside and they'll go, wait a minute, I feel just as overwhelmed as I ever felt by a time where they told me it was the spirit. And then you start deconstructing and go, yeah, they told me, I was having elevated emotion because I heard music or I saw a video that made me, really impacted me. And then there's always someone there to kind of tell you or whisper, feel something? That's the spirit, right? Well, deconstruct that. That's humanity. That's you. That's something you care about. That's your elevated emotion, which is a real human emotion, and it can be overwhelming. But like for me, like I said, I'm agnostic. And so I don't attribute that to deity. I attribute that to humanity, to nature, just the overwhelming feeling of I'm so small and insignificant and look at this amazing, huge everything, and that's an incredible feeling, but you have to kind of get comfortable with that, deconstruct a little bit, and then reframe it, I think is kind of how I look at it. How do you look at it, Landon?
To me, nature compared to the church, it's not even close. And I think that's one of the reasons I liked being the scoutmaster was I'd get to take the boys out, and you'd be out in the dark and you'd look up at the sky and just the sky is just covered with stars. When you're in a dark area, and you could point up to them and you'd say, "See that star up there? What is that? Oh, that's a sun. No, that's a billion suns." And that's a billion suns, and that's a billion suns. And you start realizing just how massive nature is. Nature is far more of a miracle than it is with a God. I mean, having some, intelligent creature, creating it sounds, what a miracle. What more of a miracle that it didn't have some creative force doing it. It's all happening natural. And when I left the church, one of the things I did, I said, I don't have to go to church on Sunday anymore. I'm going places. So I bought ATVs and I started going out. I made a deal with my wife. Every other weekend uh, we'd go somewhere, and then the other weekend she could go to church, but the weekend we'd go somewhere. And we'd go riding through these places in Utah, and I would see the rocks, and you could see millions of years of formation where the rivers would cut that out. And you're just going, oh my gosh, this planet is so incredible. It changed so much. That used to be the bottom of the ocean, and now it's the top of a mountain. How incredible is that? And you could see everything in it. And it was just so awe-inspiring to me that I just realized how small of a piece I am in this, that I'm really nothing. And and that's okay. It's okay. You're part of something, but you're nothing. Everything had to be here to have the earth be what it is. But in the end, you're just one of trillions of other species, animals, other things that have walked the earth. And that's pretty awe-inspiring when you sit and think about it, that this has been happening for millions of years.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you talking about being there in real life does a lot more for me than watching the video in the temple with
Yeah.
the little animals on it. That I that's what I equated it to is you have to look at your past and you have to reconcile those things. And I tried for so many years to feel that at the temple. And I never could. I never ever could. And like you said, with family, out in nature, that kind of thing, and laughing. Like I'm kind of loud. And when, like, that's my favorite thing is just when I get bantering with someone, like that is my joy. And you can't do that in the temple. And so I just never, I was like, this is not for me. Like, and being able to let that go and not feel like I was a failure because of that was amazing. And I do think there is an equation that the more experiences you have that contain awe, kind of the higher have happiness you level of happiness you probably have. So I think, we're always taught to be pursuing the spirit and all of that. But I do think we have to still put effort into pursuing these feelings of awe in our day-to-day lives, like taking the opportunities however they present themselves.
Yeah, I
So
always you
Go
always
ahead.
hear I am a child of God, how awe-inspiring is that? But then when you look back and you say, no, I'm made of carbon and carbon is formed in stars. I used to be a star. I used to be part of one of those things that I'm looking out into space 1 billion years ago. That is now me. How incredible is that? How awe-inspiring is that? That's more miraculous to me than being a child of God.
I'm a people pleaser. I don't know that I'm ready to like accept that I am like sparkling like the sun. Like I got to build my way up to that one. I'm not there
You
yet.
are sparkling like the sun.
Oh,
And that reminds me of a story. The sun, just the way that different people think of the spirit. So when I was an adult, probably like 15 years ago, I went home to visit my parents, just me, and it was Sunday. And I came downstairs, and my mom was clothespinning the curtains. They were already closed, but she was clothespinning them together. She goes, we don't want any light in here. We want to be reverent. And, sort of like this concept where reverence or feeling the spirit was being in a cloistered, like the temple, right? Can you think of anything more closed off? There are no windows. There are no real doors. There's nothing. I'm like you. I always felt really claustrophobic, like I fight or flight, had to run covered up and, no natural air or natural light. It was really hard for me. So, but I remember that was my mom's idea of just inside, curtains closed up so no light could get through. And I just remember having that that kind of temple feeling. And I ran out into the backyard. I remember I just stood in the sun like this. I was kind of making a point, but I was just like, no, I need to feel what to me is the spirit, whatever it is. And it's not that. To me, it's outside, it's nature, it's the sun. They're like, what are you doing out there? I'm like, oh, I'm just, sun worshiping. But yeah, it's a big moment, because there's a lot of things in the church where you're very cloistered and you're very either metaphorically or actually physically kind of contained. And if that's not the kind of person you are, that's really hard. It's really hard on you.
and if you're not part of the, cookie cutter version,
Yeah.
people have a hard time understanding. And, Landon, with your military, you may understand this, but my husband taught me what a struggle it is because he's no longer in law enforcement. He left several years ago. But being in that cloistered environment, if somebody violent is going to come in, they hit buildings that are full of people, right? And I tried to beg him to go to the temple with me because I was trying so hard for years. Like I thought we should do the date at the temple. I don't know. I was trying so hard. And he just kept pushing, and he finally said he can't have his gun on him when he's out, like on the on the benches and sitting away from me, during the ceremonies and stuff. And so it would literally give him just absolute panic, just sweating, just heart rate up, like he just could not do it. And that had never occurred to me, how unsafe emotionally that place could be. And if you're not one of those people who like walks in and is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, like you are rejected, like you are wrong. There's something wrong with you that you don't feel amazing here. So I'm just so glad to know that I am now like carbon and sparkling like the cosmos. Like I will take that with me forever. It's like the best kind of glitter, you know?
Yep. That's it.
Yeah, so I'm
Everybody's
better.
glitter. I love it.
Yay. Okay, so pursue awe. Okay, so we'll go through this is just kind of some of the basics of some of the main philosophies. This first quote kind of explains Stoicism, and it says, "We must define our happiness not by what we own or achieve, not by how others see us, not by some bigger picture of life, but by how we think and see ourselves and live our own life through what we deem virtuous and relevant." I feel like we've kind of covered some of this already, that you have to live your life based on your own values, and you cannot control what happens. That's a big thing in Stoicism that was not in this quote. But you can control how you react to it, but letting go of, possessions and things that don't really matter. And again, I thought if I leave this religion, the natural man's gonna take over, and man is inherently selfish, and so inherently greedy, inherently jealous, and I don't think that's true. Do you guys think that's true?
No, I agree with you. I haven't really heard too many other people say what you said, where that is one of the most dangerous concepts of the natural man. And that's exactly correct. So, and I love this, exploring other philosophies. I think that's really important. That's one of the main things that we did and do continue to do in the book club, isn't it, Landon? Where, we are able to read books. We read a book on Stoicism, Buddhism, all kinds of different things. You can explore it, and some things will resonate. Maybe you're not going to become a Stoic or a Buddhist, but you're going to find all these other methods that other people, resonate with them, and something's going to resonate with you. So yeah, I think it's really important. So I think it's great. I think you can just kind of read through now at the end, just the different little quotes from the different philosophies, because don't you agree, Landon, that it's important to kind of, as you're trying to find, what can I be now, right? Everything's open. It's an open slate. So studying what other people who've gone before you have arrived at, I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I think they're saying right here, by how happy you are is how you determine a successful life.
That's it. There it is. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, we'll go on to the next one. So it's Emerson. I'll just read his quickly. All of nature is an expression and permeation of one metaphysical essence of the universe or God. So he very much goes into that nature and appreciating that and the cosmos and all that, like Landon was saying. So there is a lot of overlap, I feel like, in a lot of these philosophies. A lot is a letting go of structure, a letting go of knowing all the answers, and really just accepting where you're at and accepting what
I think COVID had a big change on people when they all of a sudden realized, I don't need all of this stuff. This made me slow down and start thinking. And I think people view the world completely different post-COVID than they did pre-COVID.
I agree. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. And I think people found these different philosophies, and I was like you, that COVID was a little bit of a catalyst to speed up our exit, because I realized how happy I was not being involved with church. And I was like, isn't that the opposite of how I should feel? And that really gave me permission to go down that road. I felt a little Zen. So we'll talk about the Zen Buddhism. Zen says life is unclear and always changing. It is to be experienced from the perspective of a passenger, flowing with it and avoiding attachment to things that might make one stuck or rigid. So again, it's that accepting of the chaos and flowing with it, knowing you can't control everything, and avoiding attachment. So maybe the pleasing of others or the structure or this checklist, like just avoiding that and not getting stuck and not being rigid. Next one, be Taoism. I called this one Go with the Flow. Kind of similar, but the quote on this one is intertwined with the natural order of things, taking on a sort of fluid, intuitive, and harmonious relationship with the natural world. So a lot of reference to water, a lot of examples of that, just kind of flowing through everything. So it really just seems like with all of these philosophies, we're just really supposed to like calm the hell down, is what I feel like they're all just saying. Like, you're just supposed to like get
philosophy, calm the hell down. That's
like,
it.
honestly, like I should write a book and it's called
should.
Calm the Hell Down. Like, just all y'all, just let it go.
And it all goes back to that acceptance of randomness. When you see the world as well, this is what's happening now. Let's go with it. You don't blame yourself. You don't guess what is the Lord trying to do, or what's he trying to change in me, or what lessons he trying to teach. You just say, well, that happened now. Now what do I do? And you just have to go with it, and you don't feel guilt or shame about that something happened to you.
Yeah. And I felt pretty saddened kind of that there was such an emphasis on the second coming, I think, on the last conference, because that's not like going with the flow. Like that's an anticipation of this, you know, I don't know, it's partially catastrophic, partially miraculous, like healing event, if Christ is going to come again or whatever. But it's not accepting the way the world is today and accepting that you can find joy and you can make your world better. Whatever you're stuck in, you can get through it. And you can, get your little floaties on and float down your river of life and calm the hell down, and you're going to be okay. And it's kind of suicidal ideation to be reliant on this second coming to fix your problems. I feel like that just really saddens me, and I don't think it helps people out. I think it causes mental health issues.
Yeah, you are not wrong. And there's a huge uptick in, because I monitor all kinds of social media and especially Faithful. And boy, people are like, oh, it can't get here soon enough, or I'm scared, or young people are going, should I even plan on school? You're exactly right. It's like this idea that, everything's going to end. And that is not healthy. And it's irresponsible of the leadership at the top to keep promoting that, which they do. And it happens every time an organization loses control, especially a religious organization. That's when they dial up that rhetoric, because you can't leave now. The end is near, right? The end has always been near, and it always will be near. But you're right. Yep. You see it pretty clearly, and it's very destructive.
Well,
I think
the end is predetermined, and therefore there's no reason for you to try to change it, because it's already determined. Yep. Oh, Christ is going to come. He's going to change it. He's going to fix all this. I don't need to worry about it. When Christ isn't coming, then you say, is that the world I want my kids to live in? How do I change it?
Yeah, that's fair. I'd never thought of it that way. You're right. Well, and I just think of this Jesus that you're waiting to come. Do you really think he's going to look at you and be like, wait for me?
Yeah.
Like, and he wouldn't be like, what have you been doing? Like,
yeah,
you can do this. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole thing. That's just a peeve of mine. I don't like that. I want to be happy and uplifting and float down the river. Okay. The last one that the author talked about, and I love this, is basically we're all just nuts, and madness is not the exception. It's just part of life. And his explanation of life was this: we are made out of and live in the constant flurry of simultaneous electrical firings and chemical discharges of a brain trying to map a self onto a universe exploding with shifting matter, which it's exploding enough, which is why I did not spell constant right on this slide. But I do think it's so exciting. Like, I mean, it's a little intimidating too, but it's just chaos. Like we're all just a hot mess. Like, I don't know. I mean, do you guys ever just feel that way, that it's just like to imagine life? Like we don't understand what life is. We don't understand what consciousness is. It's kind of too much. So for things to be a little crazy and for you to be a hot mess, kind of okay. Like I'm okay with that.
That's really okay. And when you have that template, you're told that you have to figure it out. None of us can, none of us do. And then you just have all that guilt added on top of that, and you get scrupulosity and OCD. So yeah, it all goes along with randomness, finding comfort in that, finding comfort in the fact that you're just a tiny part of everything. You're an important part to you and the people around you, but you are just a tiny part. And so lose the template. I think that's part of it. I love it. Madness instead of the template.
Mm-hmm. And then this last one, going along with the madness, he said, to successfully function at all, let alone impressively, across a whole lifetime, is as much of a wonder as being itself. So if you're just pursuing your little chemical reactions that create your little life, like you're doing great, I don't know, just to have that sense of pride. I got to figure out how to combine that with not caring and not people pleasing like Landon. But, if you got up today, you're doing good. Like you're trying. I don't know. And I do think that life on the flip side of all of this is more peaceful, is happier for me. Like there were some benefits to it. I don't ever want to negate that. I grew up with some wonderful people, and I don't ever want them to feel like I disregard them in any way and their efforts and their love to me. But there was damage, and there is damage that I realize my kids are young enough, they will never have to go through that. And what a gift. And that's what I hope for my children, right? Is that they can feel this way. They can feel like life is a mess, but just put your floaties on and calm the hell down. And just, you're still floating. So you're doing amazing. Like, just celebrate that. And that's it. That's all of my slides, guys.
Yep. And there it is. I don't think you could have said it any better. You're like this amazing self-help guru. This is great.
Oh, you're so sweet.
I love it. No, this was really interesting. I mean, having gone through the presentation twice now, and hearing everybody's comments at book club and then being able to just talk through it more. This is, I hope everybody goes out and maybe gets this book. Honestly, it just gives you so much to think about. And Steph has done a really good job of, just drawing out some of the really important quotes and concepts that just really give you a lot to kind of reassess and realize you're okay, right? So no, you said it just perfectly. Landon, do you have any final thoughts?
I think
this
Steph
was great.
should make t-shirts. Calm the hell down.
Calm the hell down.
I'll get on your floaties. Yep.
On floaties.
I love it. I love it. It's the best advice ever. So nope, this is great. So thank you, Steph. Thank you. I know we're like, you did such a great job at book club. How about coming on Mormonish, right?
You have fulfilled like my wannabe podcaster dreams. Like, there is nothing more validating than like my nerdy side that has always loved to read, and then my tendency to overshare. And like, you have put those two together and said, we like this. Like, no one's ever done that for me. So I am just so grateful.
I feel like you're a born podcaster. I feel like you have a lot to say and you say it really well. And you might want to think about thinking about this.
But somebody else has to run it for me. Like, I'm too scattered. I can't you saw I misspell things. Like, I don't have it together.
Doesn't matter at all. The things
somebody else can run it for me, and I'll just talk. I will talk all day long.
That's right. Tell me where to be, tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. So, well, this was just awesome. Just wonderful. Thank you so much again for bringing this to us. And I hope everybody has been commenting in the chat. I'm sure you have, just so many different topics that we hit. And please leave comments if you're watching this after the premiere, and let us know, your thoughts on the art of living a meaningless existence, which I have to say the church and the template would probably say that's the last thing you want to do, right? That's what we're trying to help you not to do and teach you not to do. But in this way, meaningless is the catalyst to, having it all, to finding out who you really are. And that's what we're all kind of striving for on the other side of all this. So please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell. If you would like to help financially support the channel, we always have links in the show notes to Donor Box, and we're a 501c3. And we just appreciate all of you so much who do donate. It means so much to us, and it allows us to keep going and have amazing guests like Stefan. So I said Stefan, didn't I? Steph on, right? Two different words, not Stefan. That's really funny. Anyway, all right, everybody. And what's the tagline again? Calm the hell down, right? You have to say it with us, Landon. Ready? Calm the hell. Landon, you have to say it with us.
I don't remember the hell. I thought it was calm down.
It was calm the hell down.
I can say hell now. So we're going to embrace it.
You got to add that. Calm the hell down. That's it. All right. We'll see y'all next time on Mormonish. Thanks, Landon. Thanks, Steph. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.